Welcome to Heard, Afros Audio Interview Series. I'm your host, Talib Jasir, and today my guest is Nyasha Hatendi. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, man, and I'm happy to connect with you and have this conversation, amplify the work that you have done, and now your work in audio drama with Sacrilege, Curse of the Mbirwi. So, Sacrilege, Curse of the Mbirwi is an Audible original supernatural thriller that you created, wrote, and produced. It follows an American family on a luxury safari in Zimbabwe who desecrate a sacred ground and awaken an ancient spirit. The story moves through generational trauma, cultural identity, guilt, shame, and the consequences of ignoring tradition. It's presented as a fully immersive Dolby Atmos audio drama with an ensemble cast that includes Caleb McLaughlin and Kevin Carroll. That's exciting work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I got a very exciting team to work with as well. And it was a story that I lived with for a while. I took my then fiance to Zimbabwe to introduce her to my family, and we ended up going on safari. And it was in the middle of that safari where I recognized that I was the only Black person who was a guest there, and that there was a very different dynamic between me and the staff, which we got over because we're all Zimbabwean. But I could feel that tension, and that's where the seed was planted. And I really wanted to tell a story that was set in Zimbabwe, that was authentic to the Zimbabwean experience, but also identified the African American experience as well in the conversation between the two. And to put it in this sort of genre piece, make it as exciting, but also be able to talk about deeper issues. I feel very lucky to have stumbled across this and then been able to gather the interest that we did from a number of really great creatives to put something really exciting together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm looking forward to connecting with all of what you've already said, really getting deeper into the process and the work that you've created here.
Yeah.
You've built a career as an actor across British and American television and film,
Yeah.
and now you're stepping forward as the creator of Sacrilege. When you introduce yourself today, what feels most central to who you are as a storyteller?
Oh my gosh, that's a really difficult question. I've been struggling with that lately. I think I'm most happy on stage when I'm in the middle of a play. There's a moment where I'm connected to an audience very deeply and profoundly, and every time I experience that, I feel aligned with the universe in a way that's really palpable to me. But then I also feel that same connection when I'm expressing myself truthfully and fully. And so it really doesn't matter what form that takes. It can be writing, it can be directing, it can be acting, but it's really just when I'm in sync with the world around me and be able to express myself as freely and fully as possible. So it really depends. It depends on who I'm speaking to. It depends on really the circumstances that I'm in. But I guess first and foremost, I started as an actor because I really wanted to experience those stories. I'd watch movies and plays and listen to audiobooks and audio dramas, and I really wanted to experience what it was to experience those worlds and those characters. So that was where my first love started. So I think my original identity is as an actor. And then that evolved with time. I've been writing for a long time. I've been writing as a hobby, really, like scripts and stuff that I'd really like to do. And sometimes I'd share my awful scripts with my friends and have them read it through. But I never really took it seriously until COVID came about. And COVID, like I'm sure for a lot of people, was a moment of reflection that really inspired the sort of the sleeping creativity that had been there to really take it on and say, you know what, I'm going to make a real go of this. And I was lucky that it was at a particular time when, one, there weren't very many stories like this, but there was Black Panther that had entered into the zeitgeist, and so that conversation was there. So all those sort of things aligned, and I suddenly became a writer. I really don't understand how it happened, but I think it had been something that had been happening over a very long time as an actor, and then I started to evolve into a writer, and then eventually, once the thing was out there, I started to become a director. So yeah, it depends on who and when and at what stage of the journey I'm at that defines who I am in that moment.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And you speak about COVID and the reflection, introspection aspect of that.
Yeah.
And I also think of it as like this great dismantling of barriers and things that we thought we had to be and do in order to move and navigate, whether it was success, art, work, whatever. It became us truly like, okay, who am I outside of all of these things? Because I can't do any of these things that I used to do. That's normal to me. I've just been in motion with.
Yeah.
And it kind of broke open this liberation for a lot of people to say, okay, if that is no longer my identity, who am I and who do I get to be?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of that happen. So when you talk about your transition in that space and how the writing became more amplified. It became more personal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gave me permission to really sort of delve
Mm-hmm.
into what I'd always loved doing. I really love writing. Well,
Yeah.
actually, that's not true. I like it. I like it when I'm in the flow, but getting into the flow
Mm-hmm.
can be a very painful thing. But it really gave permission to experience that stuff. And talking about identity, man, COVID was like not just COVID. I had my daughter. So my wife and I became parents during COVID. We lost people. We were grieving during COVID. So there were a lot of identity shifts that happened.
Yeah.
And you realize that you can't really hang on to any one of them. We're on the
Right.
journey and we're flowing through it and we're evolving and becoming who we are in every moment. It's not something you can say, this is who I am or what I am in some way. And that became really profound and it needed that moment of stillness, I think.
For sure.
I remember driving on the highways during COVID and just there was this peace, this stillness that I'd never experienced in this city that's usually like crazy busy.
Mm-hmm.
And once you connect with that, there was something that you can't come back. You can't turn back from that.
Yeah.
That was a really beautiful moment. And I wish we could find more of those moments because I think that's why we tell stories sometimes as well. I think we're sort of striving for that moment of peace and alignment as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I coined it the great pause.
Yeah.
Knowing that so much was happening around us. We all were grieving, life, people, all of those things. But that pause for a moment, it supported and served us in a lot of ways that you just spoke about. So I definitely appreciate that. And audiences know you from projects like The Front Runner, Alex Rider, and other screen work where you've embodied characters written by someone else. What shifted internally that made you step into writing and creating your own world with Sacrilege specifically?
What shifted? What shifted was a desire to create something that other performers could really delve into. I write from an actor's perspective, and I feel like the actor's experience should be front and center of every story that we're telling. They're the live element of every story that we're telling. And so I really relished the idea of being able to write roles for actors that gave them a depth of expression that perhaps they hadn't been able to achieve elsewhere, but invited them to really reach deep into their souls and express something quote unquote forbidden, hidden, or dark, or anything. And it was really to allow for that kind of catharsis within performers, because that's what I seek a lot of the time as an actor, somewhat selfishly, is this sense of catharsis from an ability to express myself truthfully. And so shifting from being an actor into being a writer, it really came out of a desire to afford that opportunity or that experience to other performers and to share it with them, in a sense. So I hope that answers your question, but that's pretty much where the impetus came from.
Yeah, it definitely answers it. As a fellow writer, creator, audio dramatist, expresser of the inner world and the inner workings of ourselves, it is cathartic. Just the fact of getting what's inside out changes you. It shapes you.
Yeah.
And then to be able to consider those other folks, if I go through this as an actor, as a creator, then most likely there's someone else that also wants a similar experience. And maybe they haven't been allowed, given themselves permission, afforded the opportunity. Who better than someone who gets it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because that's actually what the story is about. Sacrilege is about people confronting those darker feelings and expressing themselves. There's a bunch of denial in it, which I think we all have experienced. And we're experiencing even more now. It's what's truthful, what's real. We're questioning it so profoundly these days, even though we don't need to. It's pretty obvious, but we still get in the habit of being like, oh, but is that real? Is this actually happening? And we're like, yeah, it's actually happening. And I feel that we all need to be seen and we need to be felt and we need to be heard. But we also need to be brave enough to confront that truth. And I think a lot of the time we're not brave enough. As a society, as a family, as individuals, we're often frightened of what that truth actually means. And so the story is really about confronting truth and in the hopes that everybody else will be encouraged to do them. Have the most difficult conversations you can, confront that truth, and then what happens afterwards? What happens to you in the process of doing that? That's really what I was trying to achieve with this. And I was trying to ensure that everybody who worked on it had that same experience, because I knew if they did, as you were saying, if they had it and we were having it, then an audience was going to have it. And for the most part, I think we achieved our goal in that respect.
You absolutely did. And it is so important. We recognize that we aren't socialized to be free, to be in relationship with people authentically and communicate the things that actually need to be communicated without all the distractions and pretense and all of that stuff that happens inside of the construct that we're in.
Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned earlier, that's where stories bridge that gap.
Yeah.
To being able to witness, this is what it can be, this is what it could look like if we just really started to be with one another.
Yeah.
And respect what's actually going on here instead of being so attached to, I just want it to stay normal. Like, just please let me keep my horse blinders on.
Yeah, or make the world be the world that I want it to be. Let me define the world instead of allowing the world to define itself, and then us to be humble enough to be a part of that world with all its complexity. Yeah, it would be great if we could do that.
Yeah. We're learning. We're learning. And it takes the work that we're doing and putting out into the world that is more honest and relatable, that allows us to learn at a quicker pace than we ever had in the world, because we have been fed a lot of not so truthful narratives over many, many years. So again, appreciate and respect the work that you're doing and the place that it's coming from, because that's what's necessary.
Yeah.
And after years in front of the camera, how's becoming the architect of your own narrative changed the way you approach acting roles now?
I have a lot more empathy for actors. It became clear to me that sometimes what is happening, because I'm not there, it's not me that's performing opposite somebody else, so I'm not the one looking into somebody else's eyes, so I don't see what they're giving me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not in that front seat. That means that I don't necessarily know what I've got until I've been able to sit back and look at it. It's made me just really respect the moment a lot. I noticed that when I was directing a lot of the actors in this, one of the interesting things is a lot of the directing happened around the actual performance of the scenes. It happened in conversation about what we thought about the characters' experiences, or what we thought was happening in that scene, and what we thought we might be reaching for in that scene. And so there was a lack of indication, which one of the things I said to everyone was like, look, we don't want to be sentimental. We don't want to tell an audience how to feel. And as much as we can, there's moments where we can indulge that, but for the most part, we want an audience to be able to come to the piece on their own terms, as it were. We don't want to say, this is how you should be feeling at this moment or other. And I would go away and see the dailies and work with the editor, our editor, Will Tendy, and it was amazing what would come about from that process, from the process of taking what we have and then piecing it together, and just recognizing the subtleties that were present in everybody's performance, and things that I hadn't even conceived of, and how they were interpreted and how they emerged were always much richer than I had originally thought or conceived of. And basically, I think I realized that if you allow collaboration to take its course, you end up with something far richer than you could ever originally conceived. And so as an actor, it made me trust myself. I was like, I trust the work that you're doing. It doesn't have to have bells and whistles on it, particularly with film, obviously. You can trust yourself enough to sit in the truth of it, and the complexity of it will be there, as it were. Be open and allow it to come through, and it will be there. So I think that was one of the greatest lessons I learned as an actor in the process of writing and directing other actors, was that fact. Do the work, trust it, and it will be there. And then get out of the way, effectively.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment for the fact that it's so great to still be able to learn lessons and grow from our experiences. Sometimes we feel like we've gone as far as we've gone, and I've done it all. I've been there and I know it, right? And so to be able to continue to expand and stretch yourself from each experience, I'm like, yes, that's still an opportunity here. Like, we can still grow from everything that we move through, because it's shaping you in that moment. So to hear you talk about the lessons that you gained from this experience, it opens up so much for people who even may be currently in a project or stuck in a project that they want to get out. And it's like, just keep allowing it. You're going to keep gaining. You're going to keep learning how to be, who to be, and the work will be even better because of that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, as an actor, I'm preparing for a play. It'll be the first time I've been on stage for 10 years. And it's a beautiful play. It's called Master Harold and the Boys, by somebody called Athol Fugard, with one of the great African actors of all time, John Carney. Many people know him from Black Panther. I know him from Sizwe Banzu. He did all of Athol Fugard's plays and basically originated them with Winston Chona and Zakis Mukai. And these are like great African actors of the time. And I am dreading the moment when I am on stage or in the rehearsal room with them, because I know I'm going to be freaking out about whether it's good enough or whether I know I'm going to be, my ego is so engaged at the moment that I'm really coming from a place of ego right now. And I know that the only way to get through that is to be true in the moment, is to find a way to be present in the moment. And it's a really tricky thing because it does require us to strip away our ego to realize that truth, to get rid of all the projections and just be there. And that's what I'm going to be trying to do. And I'm hoping that in doing that you inspire others to do the same. And then you end up with this beautiful collaboration where there's just freedom and honesty and connection to go to really deep and dark places, which is what is required for this play.
Yeah.
The trust in each other to know that we are able to go to those depths. And I'm really excited, but I'm also so frightened because I know it's going to require in me this discipline and this honesty and this openness, which is hard to get to. And I think that's for actors, for creatives, we have to do that all the time. And so you got to take your hat off to people who are willing to go to that place of vulnerability. And it happens all the time. And I sometimes think we forget that's what a lot of great creatives are doing all the time. That's how they live their lives.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. And the rewards, of course, are great when you get them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why we do it, weirdly enough. Yeah.
And I would offer, you mentioned becoming a parent during COVID.
Yeah.
That's a rise to the occasion scenario as well. Like, we don't know, as a parent myself, it's going to break me down in a way that I wasn't anticipating. And I'm going to have to rise to this in a way that I never thought or considered before.
Yeah.
So even that's changed you, I'm sure, as a person and how you approach the craft.
Totally. Especially as Black men, I think, being fathers. I have a daughter. I don't know about you.
Me too.
There's a very particular challenge to be the parent to a Black woman in this world. It's an honor, but it's also a very tricky task. It's something that requires total humility in ways that have been tricky at times. And I find myself being like, what the heck? I find myself struggling with it a lot, but I think it's also one of the great blessings that we have, is to be a part of that journey in a sense. And
absolutely.
Count your blessings in that respect. Yeah.
No doubt, man. Mine is 27. And it's been a beautiful journey, and it still is. And just to seal it up, has taught me all the ways to be in this world because of it. So definitely gratitude for that experience in and of itself. Yeah. So you chose audio as the primary vehicle for this project. What does sound give you that screen cannot? And what discipline did audio demand from you as a director?
Essentially, so I was just listening to it this morning, and I'm in the process of adapting it to a screenplay because we're talking about developing it into a film. And
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Fingers crossed. There's some really exciting interest. But it was funny, so I was listening to it again, preparing for this, and there isn't a level of artifice in audio in that you need to be heard. Okay, there's like a sense that we stripped it right down as much as we could so that it felt as filmic as it could. But the thing about audio that I love is that it's so intimate. It's just you and the voices and the story. And when it's that intimate, it's similar to sitting in a cinema, and even though you have other people there, you've got the screen, it's right there. It's just a relationship between you and the story, as it were. But with sound, it's even more intimate. And so you can go to even darker places. And this experience really surprised me. It really revealed the importance of sound. As I love music, for example, and one of the things that I spoke to a sound designer and music composer about was how I wanted it to feel like a piece of music, to feel like we were on a journey through different acts and different sort of the ebbs and flows of a musical journey, as it were. Because music is constantly flowing and sound is constantly flowing and shifting and evolving, when you put those earphones on, you're on for a ride in a way that I just don't feel you are in any other medium. It feels just so much more palpable. When you put your earphones on, you close your eyes, you turn off the lights, and you just go. The journey aspect of it becomes so much more palpable and clear. And then there's so many details that you can play with. We use Dolby Atmos, so once we had recorded the dialogue, we then went into the studio, and it was like making a film. It was like painting pictures with sound. And the relationship between our ears and our soul and the story is such a unique and specific one that it just has a very unique alchemy for a listener. And I think it helped that I was coming from a visual point of view. I'd always wanted to tell this visual story. And so the challenge then became, how can it become as visual as possible, but only with sound? And I was so surprised by how far you could go. We had a really great sound designer, Randy Torres, who works on a lot of Nolan's films. So he really understood what you could do cinematically with sound. And it was just a trip doing that, man. It was a relief as well, because I was like, can this actually be realized in sound in the way that I imagined? How close can we get to that visual experience? And it got to the point where when we finished it, and I was talking about audio dramas and podcasts, I wanted Audible to, once we'd gone through the whole Dolby Atmos procedure and we'd finished the final cut and we put it out there, I said, I want you to come in and sit in this studio and listen to this piece, because what I think would be an incredible experience was if we invited people into a cinema, expect them to see something on the screen, turn the lights down, and then turn the sound up, and show them just how detailed and rich that experience was without even seeing anything. Because I think it would really translate to people just how rich the sound experience can be. Our own imaginations, how good they are. We fill in the gaps. We're very good at doing this. And doing it in this medium really made me aware of just how, if we can engage each other's imagination in the right way, if we're attuned to how we can do that, it can be so powerful and so visual and so palpable in a way. And so we get the stories, we experience the stories with such a depth that we don't necessarily in other mediums, that's unique to the audio drama medium.
Yes, it is. It is. And similar to you, as someone who loves music, and my mind immediately, even watching a film, television, I hear the score, the percussions that are moving the scene forward, and or the instruments, whatever it is. And I can tell how it's moving it forward.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you used the word imagination, because it's exactly what it is. It's almost like a person who doesn't have all of their senses. One heightens. And in that moment, for audio dramas, you have to engage the imagination. And it's similar to play as a kid. And it's something that gets lost over time when things become tactile and tangible and we see everything in front of us. An audio drama isn't the last thing on our mind. Radio drama stopped in the 50s. And so it's not something that we are even engaging with. And so that's what is so rich about audio dramas and the medium itself, is that we are getting this opportunity as creators, but also the listeners, to activate the imagination in a way that has been really subdued and suppressed for many years now.
I know, you're right. Yeah, we're given so much. We're told this is how it should be, or like the sentimentality of the movie business. It's so, it can be so oppressive sometimes. And to your point, that's exactly it. It's like, it's your story. It really becomes your story, because it's your mind that's then engaging the images. And those images that you engage in your mind when you're listening to this piece are so unique to you. It's nobody else. It's you. This is your story in ways. And I don't know, there's something really beautiful about that. It's like you're affording people the experience of creating their stories in their own mind. You know what I mean? And having a relationship with that story that is so unique to them in a way. It is very liberating. It is a very liberating thing. Yeah, it's the beauty of audio drama. And that's it in a nutshell.
For sure, for sure. Thank you for that. And Sacrilege draws from African cosmology and spiritual imagination. How intentional were you about rooting this story in something culturally specific rather than abstract horror?
Well, because I was writing for an African audience. I wasn't writing for a Western audience. I was writing for my friends at Peterhouse, my old school in Zim, and my cousins. And I was writing for the people in rural Zimbabwe whose beliefs in the supernatural are still very much real. We still believe it. It's still part of our culture. We believe in the spiritual world. It is our world. And we have a very unique relationship to that. And I wanted to write something that was specific to that. It stemmed from stories of the origin of the Mbirwi, because it's a collation of different sort of legends. But it came from a time when I was in the Eastern Highlands with my cousins from Canada, and we were hiking. And we were with a local guy called Chipo, this wonderful guy who just taught us all about nature, basically, the nature in the world. And then I remember going on this hike once, and he was telling us about this group. They were the children of an ambassador, I believe, and they were very obnoxious, and they were insulting the flora and the fauna, and they were just being really badly behaved and disrespectful. And he said that in this part of the world, you cannot do that because it's dangerous, and the world will react in a way that is violent. It could be violent. And famously, and I don't know whether this is an old wives' tale or not, and I'm loath to go any deeper into the specifics because of that, but they disappeared. And there'd always been this feeling that what had happened was that they had disrespected the local culture and the local flora and fauna, and the nature had reacted by getting rid of them, and they'd had to pay the consequences. And so when he told that story, it was something that was very palpable. Obviously, I was young. My cousins remembered that moment. It was a moment where legend and spirituality and storytelling all came together in a way that sort of reminded us, like, respect this world, respect this culture, respect your people. And I never forgot that moment. When I created the cosmology of the Mbirwi, that was what I was thinking about. I was also thinking of like the Tokolosh, which is like this strange demon that sort of lives underneath people's beds in the world. And it's this creator of mischief and violence, and it can be engaged by people to cause mischief within the community. And you could go to rural parts of Southern Africa and you mention that word and people will know what you're talking about. Like newspapers with little articles about appearances of this thing. So it's very much part of the psyche. And it's interesting because when we think of Western storytelling and African storytelling, there's certain sensibilities that are very much alive in African storytelling that aren't necessarily alive in Western storytelling. And that specificity is what I wanted to evoke for an African audience, and knowing that would resonate with them. And I hope it also resonates with the Western audience as a result. But yeah, so in creating that, I also wanted to fold in the notion of colonialism as well. And there's this feeling that everything happens to Africa, that we are the victims of Western exploitation or Eastern exploitation in some way or form. And we don't react. We don't have something to fight back, in a sense. Even though we do on a daily basis. We do just by performing and just by existing as Africans. And the world is going to recognize that eventually. But I wanted to start to create an entity that encapsulated all the things that we feared expressing: the violence, the anger, something that could inflict the same pain and devastation as had been inflicted on us as a people, on Africans and African Americans, on Black people as a culture. And I wanted to create an entity that encapsulated all of those different elements. And so that's what the Mbirwi became. It became this sort of legend of its own, this idea of its own, that gave access to all of those different ideas and experiences and feelings and sort of stories, really. And yeah, so that's how it came about, really.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we understand about ourselves as diasporic creators is that we don't just create. There's something always coming with us, right? These traditions, this history, these oral stories that we've heard over the years, our culture, whatever it is, it comes with us in whatever we create. And it's almost like there's no choice. It's coming out, it's going to come with us, it's going to show up. It's like, don't forget about us, about me, about our history, that this somehow needs to be integrated in the stories that you tell. It's a disruptor in narratives, speaking of what folks think versus what's actual. And when we're able to tell these stories, it does disrupt narratives, but not only for outside gaze and lens, for ourselves. To be able to connect with, oh yeah, I remember hearing about this story, but I tried to push it so far back that I don't claim it, I don't think about it in my everyday life anymore. And this is a reminder that, oh yeah, it's a part of my DNA, and there's an importance of memory. And bringing these stories back.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think we need to respect that in every individual. And I say that particularly for Black people. I feel like there's such a history of trauma within our community, globally, that we deal with every day, that we see enacted every day. And we need to learn to treat each other with kindness and acknowledgement of the fact that we're all dealing with this trauma in some way or another. And to allow people to have that experience and to understand that is going to be a part of every individual, that those experiences are going to be a part of us and they're going to be expressed through us in some way or form. And there's nothing to be feared about those expressions or those choices of how we go through the world. It's more about making sure that if we are going through the world in a way that we're doing something where we're leaving it a little bit better, You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
we're leaving each other feeling a little bit more confident, or a little bit more like we belong, a little bit more like we deserve to be seen, a little bit more, yeah, we can be everything. We are complex, and that's the reality, all right? It's not the exception. And we shouldn't try to homogenize. We should celebrate our complexity, particularly within the Black community. I feel like there's a power to coming together in that way. And at the end of Sacrilege, there's a song by a band called Sinkane called Come Together, which on the surface of it is a little bit cheesy. I get that. But at the same time, I wanted that to be the message that I left, because a lot of the ideas and the thoughts throughout the story can be divisive. They're intentionally divisive. But I wanted that to be the experience for an audience. These ideas I'm not comfortable with, or these ideas I feel strongly against. This is not the way that we are. This is not the way that I am. To bring us to confront those limitations that we've placed on how we accept or not accept each other. And that is all for the purpose of coming together at the end. To come together at the end as a family, as a collective, because that's where our power lies, and that's where truth lies, and that's where peace lies. And that was the intention of the story, was to take people through all of those uncomfortable moments, both culturally and personally, through these characters in a safe way, and get to a point where we could be genuinely together with each other.
Yeah.
Like see each other for who we are, rather than who we want or expect people to be, but who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a window for those of us who get to look in, and it's a door that opens up for us to step in, expand our worldview, things that we have been taught, think we know. Now, here's another story. This expands you.
Yeah.
This opens you up to something completely different. And that's what our world gets to be, and not any of the other madness. It's all going to remain. We're clear on that. The world is what it is. It's madness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But these little sparks of creativity and storytelling that allows us to expand our sense of self, our concept of self, and the humanity in each other. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate it.
It's wonderful when you get filmmakers that are doing that. I think what Ryan Coogler is doing at the moment is exactly that. And I think that's what the world really needs, is permission to be who we are. So yeah, that's why we do it. That's why we do it.
For sure. And speaking of that, there's often an assumption that culturally specific stories are niche. What do you believe audiences are actually capable of when we stop underestimating them?
That logic is a commercially motivated logic in my mind. It's the logic of a very, I want to say small-minded, because that would be unfair, but I think a very controlling idea. The idea that audiences are not able to conceive of different cultures or different worlds and see them as valid and rich and exciting as others is a complete and utter misnomer, created by executives in the world that want to make their job a little bit easier, if you ask me, or maintain control of a certain narrative about what the world is, and are afraid of that complexity because it's a risk. You know what I mean? It's a risk. But time and time again, I was watching Parasite the other day, an amazing movie. And I've been a lover of all Korean cinema since I was a kid. And people are, oh, Korean cinema, no, this has been around for years. This has always been relevant. This has always been part of our ethos. And I'm sure it's inspired a huge amount of people that are now working in mainstream media. The specificity of these stories gives us permission to explore our own, in a way.
Yeah.
And I think the moment you start telling something specific and unique and authentic, it becomes universal, because people want that. My wife was having this conversation the other day about cinema for women now becoming the highest grossing cinema ever. I think Housemaid is one of the highest grossing movies out there at the moment. And you wonder, how is that? You think, well, of course, because these stories are told specifically for them and it's appealing specifically to them, but it's doing so in a way that it clearly is translating across all bounds. So that's a misnomer. When you talk about Sinners, it's about African-American culture. It's about the blues. We're talking very specifically about this culture, but somehow it translates. The same with Black Panther, the same with Parasite, the same with all of these stories that are culturally specific. They do translate. The same with Tsotsi, for example, the Athol Fugard film that won the Oscar back in the day. That's a total and utter misnomer. And I wish people would just stop talking about stories in that way. Every book you've ever read is a world that you haven't experienced, and because it's specific, you're able to experience. So let's just stop with that bullshit, because I think it's getting in the way of us having a rich story, a rich canon of stories to feed from. It invalidates a lot of us in a way that I think is destructive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that. You're right. Stories, much like music, is universal. The energy is there. And I've seen a lot of creators and work with them and saying, don't limit us because you think that we won't get it.
Yeah.
The only way we can get it is if you open it up to us.
Yeah. It's funny that the people in power that are saying this are people who don't have that experience. And they have their own very unique experience, which they think is valid. And it is valid. It's totally valid.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't come at the exclusion of other perspective or experiences. And they do themselves a disservice by continuing that narrative. And it's been proven that's the case. It's been proven. It's in the numbers.
Absolutely, it has. And you mentioned the concern of Blackness being co-opted. In practical terms, what does that look like in genre storytelling, and how do you safeguard it in your own work?
It's a really good question. I think because we're part of a capitalist system, we're part of an American society that has a particular sort of idea about individuals. We always talk in terms of identity. What's your accent from? I always get that. Where'd you get your accent from type thing. But we tend to like to put people in boxes. And so when you take that sort of way of thinking and you put it into the commercial world, or the world of storytelling, into the logic that we just spoke of, like what sells effectively, is the number one question that a lot of businesses are asking when it comes to these stories. And so there's an idea of what Blackness is that sells. And so my concern is that in co-opting that identity of what it is to be Black or Blackness is, and I've experienced this as an actor a lot of the time, people don't know what to do with me as an individual because I don't fit into any boxes. And I have a lot of friends that are just very uniquely different, but they're still Black and they still have this experience. So the idea of like co-opting that identity and saying that only if you adhere to these certain ideas of what Blackness is, and often that's a Blackness that is imposed upon you, a projection by the society within which you live, then that is in itself a limitation and a danger. And so I would encourage people to be very wary of doing that and be very wary of when that is happening, because are you going to go for the big payday, or are you going to allow people to be who they are ultimately at the end of the day? Or are you going to become part of that system that's oppressing them, or are you going to sort of become part of the system that is liberating them? And so when I speak about the co-opting of Black identity, I think that is the issue that I'm speaking about. And so in my work, I wanted there to be, and I will continue to want there to be, a diversity of Black voices in particular, to really specifically prevent that ever happening. And I want the characters that I write to be very complicated. They don't necessarily have to be likable. In fact, most of the family are very dislikable, but they are also human in a very unique way. So I try to do that as much as I can. There's always the voice in my head is my auntie is going, no, don't say that. We're not that. I'm like, no, actually, I'm going to ignore that. And I know it's going to get me into trouble, but I'm going to do it specifically because I don't want anybody telling me or anybody else who they should be or what they should be. I just find that really oppressive in a way.
Yeah.
And I understand, as a community that has been traumatized with the passing of the likes of Jesse Jackson, Woody King Jr., Martin Luther, there's a great legacy that we have to stay together. And again, come together and be part of each other. We have to be able to figure out a way to do that while also allowing us to be diverse and complex and different and to disagree. We need to be able to be all of it. And so in my work, that's what I strive to do, is to show Black people in ways that the world hasn't conceived of them, and sometimes refuses to conceive them as. And I feel it's provocative, yes, but it's closer to a reality and a truth that I think serves a better purpose than the opposite, as it was.
Stories allow the contextualization of humanity. They're unlikable. Let's find out why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's empathy, man. It's really cultivating empathy. One of my favorite, going to Greek theater, is the Medea. And the Medea is a story of a woman who is cheated on by her husband and as a result kills her children in order to get back at him as a form of revenge. And reading that play was such an interesting experience for me. And it really did spark my sort of desire to become an actor, my desire to write, because even though she did the most horrific things, and arguably you could say one of the most villainous women that there is, I found, not that there is, that's probably not fair, but I found that there was an immense empathy I had with her. I could understand, in spite of the things that she'd done, why she did them and where it came from, even if I didn't agree with it. And sitting in that place of empathy was a very powerful thing for me. That inspires every story that I try to tell. That inspires every character that I try and play. I always try and get people to understand that person deserves to be loved. That person deserves to have their experience honored and seen in its entirety, and not just shoved to one side and seen as one sort of concrete thing. God's creation should be seen in all its complexity and beauty, in a sense. That piece really made me aware of the power of that in a way. And to this day, every time I feel that from a filmmaker, I feel like a filmmaker saying, yeah, I know you might dislike this person, but there is a complexity here that is in itself beautiful. And that person, regardless, is deserving of love. That is a really powerful thing. That's a very moving thing to experience. And I try to bring that to my stories as well, and try to work with people that are trying to do that in a way, because I think that's what an audience really wants from stories, ultimately, at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. And even if they don't know that they do, essentially, if that's the experience, it's definitely what is going to come out of it. At least you hope. So thank you really for sharing that. And horror can be deeply psychological and symbolic.
Yeah.
What conversations are you hoping audiences have after listening to Sacrilege that just don't resonate in fear, but also, as you spoke about, history, belief, and power?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, history, belief, power. I want people to appreciate their family a little bit more. Again, there's the empathy aspect. I'm trying to think of a way that doesn't sound as cheesy as it is, and it isn't cheesy. It's love, man. It really is learning to love oneself and each other. I think that's really like the goal of the piece. I think horror is great for that because it does challenge you to go to places that you are fearful of. And I think that's why horror works as a genre, is that you know that when you're going in to watch a horror movie, that you are going to be forced to a place of discomfort, and you are going to be forced to endure things that are uncomfortable. And the resulting catharsis of that is something that is ultimately beneficial, is ultimately joyful and great. And that's what most people go to horrors for, is for that catharsis at the end of it. And that catharsis is, one, you get to the end of the movie. I'm terrible at horror movies. Every time I go into the cinema and watch a horror movie, I'm like, why did I put myself in this position? Why am I sitting here and going through this trauma? Like, I watched Weapons the other day. I watched Get Out the other day as well. And all of them, I was like, why are we doing this? But then the thing about Weapons and Get Out that I really appreciated is that the catharsis came through laughter. There was part of it was just, it's like really funny. Do you know what I mean? And it allows you to laugh at like the ridiculous of the situation, and it allows you to express, to let go a little bit. And so that's why I really like horror. It is comic in a way. It strides the line of comedy and tragedy. And I think that allows you to delve into lots of different feelings and experiences for audiences. And I think there's a lot of freedom that you get from that. And so, yeah, I think that's why horror is a great genre, and why I thought specifically for Sacrilege it was great. And we've spoken about this. I didn't realize I was writing a horror until in the studio listening to what was coming back at me. There was a depth of expression that was truly terrifying to me. I remember saying to Christina Elmore Duke, there's the scene where the mother, which I don't want any spoilers, but what happened to her in that moment, I remember feeling, oh my God, I've gone too far. This is too much. And Mike, actually, we were talking, I think, had the same response. There were moments that it just goes too far, but then you're able to go through it and keep going, as it were. And just that fact in itself is part of the value of horror, is that you can get through it, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's why I love horror as a genre, and I love horror for this. And why I think it's such an effective tool, really, for audiences and for storytellers on how to engage an audience as well.
It really is. I definitely can resonate to discomfort of horror.
Yeah.
Get Out, speaking of, I remember being very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I would tell people, because my wife loves horror, I can take it or leave it. I said, it's not that I'm afraid, I'm uncomfortable, you know, and I've been known to get up out of a movie theater at the time that it is at its extreme. And I'm like, I can't take this anymore. I got to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's what makes it so powerful. It is evoking something inside of me that I don't have a relationship with ordinarily.
Yeah.
It's provoking me to feel and think and react in a way that I just said I don't want to. And now here I am experiencing it. So yeah, it is a great genre. And when you said that, where you were in the studio and you said, I've gone too far, and it's still there, you didn't take it out, you move past it.
Yeah.
Forget us as listeners, you move past it. And how that, I'm sure, shifted you as a creator as well.
Yeah. I didn't want to censor myself. It was like, I know that this is making me feel really uncomfortable and that this could be interpreted in a particular way by the world, but it is true. There was a rage and there was an anger and there was a sadness and there was a grief, and they were all coming together at the expression of this one moment. And it was true. And if I tried to edit that out, if I tried to limit that, and this was purely me, other people are going to have a completely other experience of it, but this was just something in me, and that voice in me was saying, no. And there was a lot of moments in this where I was like, no, that's you. Let it be. Like, don't shy away from what's you, in a way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had to move through it.
Yeah. It's a duty. It really is. When we get right down to it, it's a duty to push that far and see how far we can go with it. So I really appreciate that. And thank you for keeping it in and not shying away from it at all, because that's what's necessary. Just have a few more questions for you. Moving from actor to creator shifts the business conversation too. What have you learned about ownership and IP through creating Sacrilege that you didn't have to really think about as solely a performer?
Oh, gosh. Well, as a performer, you're part of somebody else's creation. And unless you're the number one on the call sheet and you're also a producer, then you really are at the mercy of the other collaborators and the producers and the system as it is. And so there's an understanding of that relationship. So it's easier to let go once you've been a part of something, and it's going to be what it's going to be. You do your best work and you move on. But when it comes to this, when you create your own IP, and I'm going through this now as we're adapting it and having the development conversations, the aspect of one, collaboration becomes all the more important. I will be a producer on any iteration of this IP. It means I will maintain creative control of it, whatever happens, and I will have a say. And that was very important to me from the outset. Because in my mind, the success of this story relies on it being told and maintaining its uniqueness and maintaining the focus on the audience that it was designed for. That specificity is very important to it being successful, in my understanding, as a piece from a business point of view. And so preserving what is authentic and unique about the piece becomes even more important. From an IP, having that control, it becomes even more important. Particularly for an African story, particularly a story that's told from a very unique perspective. It's going to go across many different desks. There's going to be a lot of opinions that come through, that a lot of people that want to change this into being something, as I was saying, that box that they're going to want to try and place it into. And the thing about that is, yeah, we want it to get made, and yeah, we want to make the very best thing that it can be. We also want as many people to see it as possible. And you want it to be good business, not only for itself, but for the next story. I've got 3 stories that I want to tell that are all in the same world and sort of iterations of the same story that go deeper and deeper into the African experience. So I really need this to be a success from a business perspective, but I also need it to get made. And so I think one of the things that I started learning, and I've come to understand as I go through this process that I'm still going through, is that as a creative, you have to juggle all of those things at the same time and have to know, again, as a writer, kill your babies is the thing. As a producer, it's also, you got to understand what babies to kill and not kill, so to speak. It sounds brutal, and it is. It really is. But there's a luxury to just being an artist, and an actor, and being able to just go in there and know that you've already got there because you have a particular point of view that is going to service the project in a way that's going to elevate it. But having laid that down, you can go off and you've done your job. As a producer, it's different. It can be the best thing in the world, but you've still got to convince people every step of the way that it has to be what it is in order to exist. And that's tricky. That's tricky. And there's a lot of learning going on into how best to do that, how to go about doing that. And hopefully we'll see the results in a year or so's time, probably more. But I really hope that whatever happens with it, an African audience, a Zimbabwean audience, my friends are going to walk away saying, that was Nyasha, that was him, that was his expression of who he is. And it was also true to our experience. Because I also think that's where its success lies. If we can do that, it will be successful.
Yeah. Learning what gets to be enough in what we're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If someone presses play on Sacrilege, and when they do, without knowing anything about you, what do you hope they discover? Not about the project, but about themselves.
Oh, well, I hope they discover that they are human, that your flaws and your vulnerabilities are strengths, that it's okay to fail, that grief is something we move through. It's not something that defines us. That families are complicated, that you're not alone in that. I really want people to feel that they aren't alone in going through difficulty in family and in life. Yeah, I think that's the overarching thing is like, I want people to feel seen. I want people that have had these difficult moments and conversations and experiences to feel like there's somebody else that understands what that is like. And if not what it's like, has a space open for them to express that, live that, and know that it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I want everybody to know that they're going to be okay.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's something to be able to say that I'm okay and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nyasha, it's been a pleasure being in conversation with you today and connecting. Please tell the folks how to stay in connection with you, if there's a website, social media, and also any upcoming projects that you might want to speak on.
Yeah, well, I will be doing a play at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles with John Carney and Ben Beatty called Master Harold and the Boys by Athol Fugard. And I would encourage everybody that can to get a ticket to that. It's directed by Terrell Alvin McCraney and Emily Mann, and it's going to be a great piece of theatre. So anybody in LA and not in LA, if you have the urge, come over and have a look at that. That's going to be up April. I have got a LinkedIn account, Nyasha Hatendi on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for producers, artists, writers, directors to collaborate with and be in conversation with. So please reach out to me there. And yeah, there's a TV series called Debriefing the President about Saddam Hussein that's going to be on HBO soon that I would encourage people to have a look at. It's, again, very uncomfortable conversations that are being had about American imperialism that I think is going to be a really exciting conversation. And then for those who love mystery, there's a Netflix show called The Seven Dials Mystery by the genius that is Agatha Christie, which I feature in a little bit. And I encourage people to check that out because there's a really interesting character that I'm very proud of who speaks truth to power in a way that I think many will find cathartic and interesting, and is one of the reasons why I was involved in that specific project. So yeah, other than that, that's what I'm up to, and I hope to be doing more with Sacrilege, hope to be doing much more in general as a writer and a director, and yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, rooting for you, man, and wishing you all the best. And thank you again for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate it.